Elders in Underworld are more than just a symbol of age. In fact, they hold the highest rank in the vampire hierarchy in this vast saga. Throughout the series, we witnessed the destruction of this institution in the first movie and its reconstruction only in the last one. But the question remains, what's the difference between Viktor, Marcus, Amelia versus Selene, David and Lena? Which of these groups is better for vampires in the grand scheme of things? The first elders came from Marcus' necessity to stop his brothers, who had turned into the first werewolf. To do this, Marcus allowed himself to be infected by a bat, becoming the first vampire. He then turned two humans, Viktor first and then Amelia, both nobles with lands and resources to raise large armies to fight against William's werewolves. This conflict would last over 600 years, ending with Viktor and Amelia joining forces to imprison the werewolf, something that went against the first vampire's will, but had become a necessity for everyone else. This was the tipping point for them, as they had already grown apart as rulers. Viktor was driven by greed and ruled with an iron fist, while Amelia loved spreading covens and creating new ways of life for the vampires, and Marcus tried to combat Viktor politically, but was never successful. Since that event, the chain as we know it was born. One would rule for 100 years and sleep for 200, with this internal conflict lasting for almost 1,000 years. At a time when the vampires were at the top of the world, William was imprisoned for centuries, and the Lycans were almost completely wiped out, with their leader supposedly finished. No one knew that he was alive, trying to create a hybrid by hunting down the descendant of Alexander. He finds him, and, even worse, a death dealer named Selene falls in love with this man, who turns into a Lycan and then a hybrid. This newly formed couple defeats Viktor and Marcus, and Amelia is ambushed by the Lycans. With the fall of the old leaders on both sides, humans discover the existence of all immortals, triggering a purge that severely reduced their numbers. At this point, Selene reappears after being captured, defeating a large group of Lycans at the XGen labs, and meeting and transforming David. She discovers that the vampire covens are divided and working independently, and later we learn that a new government has emerged, though it only controls parts of the old empire. This is the Elite Council. When Marius builds one of the largest armies, the two receive help from a reclusive coven called the Northern Coven or the Nordic Coven, where they meet Lena, their greatest warriors with unique powers. In the end, the unit of the three defeats Marius and takes power. David as a pure-blood son of Amelia, Selene who earns her place as the strongest and purest, and Lena the greatest representative of great strength. The council recognized the three as the new elders. Both groups were formed during times of crisis, and both were due to the werewolves, who were the end of many people and could have changed the entire world. Vampires managed to place themselves above this situation. The difference is that Marcus had organized both groups while lying to keep them on his side, claiming that if he or his brother were destroyed, all immortals would be, while the new group emerged with a shared goal of restoring a destroyed society, even if it's a reflection of an old conflict. They are directly linked, such as David being the pure-blood son of Amelia, and Selene being turned by Viktor and one of his favorites. The only somewhat outside pieces is Lena. They would become the greatest authority when it comes to vampires, serving as role models for other members of its society, as well leaders to guide them and open new horizons, needing to be on the front lines. The main difference between the two groups lies how they handle vampires and other species and to govern them, in theory, as we can only speculate based on their behavior so far. First, Amelia's teachings. Despite her brief screen time, she's one of the most important vampires of all time, as many covens love her for her kindness, making her a true mother of vampires. David inherits this from her, being a great warrior who understands his enemies, much like Selene and Lena, unlike Viktor's iron fist and Marco's insanity. Even though she was part of the originals, she was somewhat marginalized due to the political games between them. The tolerance towards other species is a tricky topic because Selene has a hybrid daughter, which is a crucial point. Viktor does the worst to his daughter because of the hybrid in her womb and her lycan lover, while Selene embraces these hybrids and even falls in love with one. Furthermore, she represents a new kind of vampire, already straying from her father's conventional views. Lena is a ritualized vampire, something very new to this world, further breaking conventions, although David and Lena are pureblood. What is the most important that they have the ability to lead together with little to no internal conflict, showing other vampires that a more stable and organized government is possible, possibly setting a better example for all. The trajectory of the Elders in Underworld saga reveals much more than simple leadership conflicts or individual difference, reflects the ongoing struggle for power, adaptation and survival of a species that must shape itself to changing circumstances. The ancient Elders, Viktor, Marcus and Amelia, built the foundations of a vampiric society, forging in times of crisis and battles against the lycans and werewolves. Despite their capabilities, greed, internal conflict, and intolerance towards other species were factors that ultimately led to their downfall. In contrast, the new elders, Selene, David, and Lena, represent a renewal not only in leadership but also in philosophy governing vampires. Unlike their predecessors, they bring a less hierarchical and a more collaborative approach, guided by mutual respect and acceptance of difference. Selene, in particular, symbolizes this evolution, integrating elements from different bloodlines and adopting a stance that blends strength and empathy. David and Lena complement this leadership by balancing tradition and innovation, allowing for a more stable and inspired government. This contrast between the ancient and the new elders highlights a fundamental lesson. Societies, even immortal ones, must evolve to survive. The ancients brought stability and order during chaotic times, but their mistakes taught the new leaders the importance of unity, tolerance, and adaptation. This shift in perspective not only strengthens vampires internally, but also prepares them to face external threats and build more promising future for their species. Ultimately, the cycle of history shows us that each generation carries the legacy of the previous one, but also the duty to correct its mistakes and build something better. Selene, David, and Lena, with their difference and unique powers, exemplify a future where strength and wisdom go hand in hand, ensuring that the vampires continue to thrive even in the face of adversity. Thus, the rise of the new elders is not merely a hierarchical restructuring, but a declaration that learning from the past is the key to shaping a brighter future.